Welcome in, everybody. We're having people come in right now and join, and we'll get started in just a few minutes. And today's virtual webinar presentation will be on what we call retirement today. There's going to be a digital chat there in the chat room, and so feel free throughout the webinar to put in general questions into the chat. It can be private. We have team members standing by that can answer those questions privately, and then it can be a public chat where everybody can see what you're saying. And then this course and class today has always been meant to be a two-part course and class. And the second part of the class is actually what we call a lab session, where you can take all of this great retirement information and put it together into a lab for you. We put together all that information for you, and we apply all that information to your own retirement lives. And we kind of see how that looks like on yourselves, and when it comes to making Social Security decisions, planning for RMDs and lowering taxes, and fighting through a bear market like we're in now, all these things, we put that together into a lab session. So this is a two-part course and class. We're in the first session tonight and today, and then the lab session will be the second part of the class and course. So in the digital chat, we're going to be dropping a Calendly calendar link into the chat where you'll be able to just click on the link and see our calendar to set up that one-on-one lab session with us. There's no charge for it. It's totally free, and there's no pressure or obligation. It's basically just taking all the information from the class, putting that together into a lab session to have your specific questions answered. We're also, there are some people that are attending today's webinar that registered early enough to actually receive a workbook in the mail. And this class comes with a physical workbook. If you received the workbook in the mail prior to today's webinar, that's great. If you didn't, we're going to put a link to a PDF version of the textbook in the digital chat. Is that already in there, Angela? It's already in there. So that PDF version of the textbook is in the chat. Go ahead and download it so you can walk through the PDF. And for those of you with the physical workbook, follow along with me as we get started here in just a couple of minutes. And for those of you that did not receive the physical textbook, we will mail those out to you as long as we have your residence addresses. There's also going to be a survey presented in the digital chat at the end of the class today. This is about 2 hours worth of content that we're going to try to condense into about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. We are going to do our best, and we're going to address all the topics in the workbook and in the PDF, but it is a lot of content. We're going to do our best to trim that down from about 2 hours down to about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. Because although everybody's probably home right now, maybe you don't want to hear about retirement for the next 3 or 4 hours. These classes are typically held at Northern Virginia Community College, and with everything still closed, we have shifted to virtual appointments. All of our appointments are over phone and video, and these webinars, obviously, through the computers until we get back to face-to-face classes. There are people continuing to trickle in here, and we'll probably just give it 1 or 2 more minutes and then get started. Again, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, just submit those questions into the digital chat room there. We have team members standing by to answer those questions. There's also a link to our calendar where you can set up that second part of the class, which is the complimentary lab session, to put all this information into use for yourself. It's one thing to get all of this great information, it's another thing to put it into action. And we're obviously hosting these classes via webinar right now because we can't host them in person. That's protecting our attendees. And however, anyone that is approaching retirement or in retirement still needs to obtain this good information when it comes to their retirements, especially in the volatile stock market that we're in right now. Okay, well, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. And Angela, can you just confirm with me that you can see the PowerPoint? Okay. All right, so I'm going to minimize this here. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get started, everybody. Welcome into today's virtual webinar hosted through the American Retirement Institute. And the name of today's class is Retirement Today. And things are definitely changing. It seemed like so long ago that 2008 happened, and then all of a sudden, we're back into a similar situation here in 2020. So things are changing, and things can change pretty quickly. This isn't your grandparents' retirement where everybody retired on pensions and a Social Security check, and that was pretty much it. Nowadays, pensions are a thing of the past. Very few people have pensions, and so the onus is on us to do everything that we can to make sure we have done the job we are supposed to have done by the time we retire. So there's much more responsibility that we have nowadays to retire successfully. And there's so much information about there when it comes to planning for retirement and how to invest and where to invest. So hopefully today's webinar will help you, provide a lot of information to you on a lot of the different various retirement planning topics. So in my day job, we are financial professionals that predominantly help people 55 to 75, those people just about to retire or just into retirement, to not only cross the finish line into retirement successfully, but to retire successfully as well. But today, I'm not here to talk about that. I'm not here to talk about my day job. I was invited by the American Retirement Institute. I'm one of maybe about 100 financial advisors and professionals across the country that teach these classes, about 2 hours worth of content at local universities and colleges across the country. So again, this class has always been meant to be a 2-part class, where today you'll hear this webinar. We'll go through the textbook on all of these different retirement planning topics, which is great information for you to understand and how that can impact your retirement. But the second part of the class and course is going to be the lab session. And so I would really encourage, for those of you that are not yet clients of ours, to take advantage of the lab session, where you take all of this great information, put it together into a lab to see what this information looks like for you. When do you best take Social Security? How to plan for RMDs, how to lower taxes, how to invest in a bear market and get through a bear market. So a lot of this information we'll talk about today. Just a real quick story that I want to share with you before we begin. And that story is about a gentleman named the Great Blondin. I don't know if anyone that is listening to this webinar has heard of that gentleman, but he was nicknamed the Great Blondin. And the Great Blondin came over from England, I believe, in the mid 1800s. And he was one of the greatest, I believe, the greatest tightrope walker of all time. And he crossed over on a tightrope. He crossed over Niagara Falls many, many times on a rope without falling, without dying. And the first time he crossed over on a tightrope by himself, then again, he crossed over it with a buddy on his back, crossed over Niagara Falls again. Mind you, this is about 160 feet high. Crossed over the Niagara Falls again. Somehow managed to climb his way down the rope all the way down to the water, take a cup of water, then climb himself back up to the rope and cross over Niagara Falls again. He did this over and over, and little by little, very quickly started making a name for himself. Finally, one of the last times he crossed over Niagara Falls successfully on a tightrope. The last time he did that, there was a gentleman waiting on the other side, and he had a wheelbarrow. And the guy with the wheelbarrow said, "Hey, Great Blondin, do you think you can push this wheelbarrow over across Niagara Falls?" And the Great Blondin said, "Yeah, I bet you can, but I'm not going to do it unless you jump in the wheelbarrow with me." So that guy jumped in the wheelbarrow with the Great Blondin, and guess what? They made it over Niagara Falls, 160 feet up in the air, successfully. So there are two kinds of people that are going to watch this webinar. The first type of person is going to watch the webinar, and they're not going to jump into the wheelbarrow with us. So in other words, they're not going to take part in the lab session, and they're going to take the information and perhaps do nothing with it. And the second group of people that are watching this webinar are actually going to jump in the wheelbarrow with us, take advantage of the lab session, the second part of this course, and actually apply this information to your financial lives. And whether you do that with us, whether you do that with somebody else, really encourage you. Okay, I think that person was muted out. I would really encourage you to jump into the wheelbarrow with us and apply all this information to your own financial lives. Okay. All right, just a little bit about myself. I'm the founder and CEO of Abich Financial Services. We're headquartered in Ashburn, Virginia. This is my 18th year helping families retire successfully. And again, predominantly we help people that are 55 to 75 years old. We have about 600 clients, predominantly in the DC metro area, a lot in Northern Virginia, Fairfax County, Loudoun County, Montgomery County, Arlington, and then we have a lot of clients that end up moving, and they move down to Florida, to the Carolinas. And we are featured contributors to Forbes, Fortune, CNN Money. We have our own retirement planning radio show every Saturday at 2 p.m. on WMAL 105.9, a little over 3 years now, every Saturday at 2 p.m. And then if you haven't heard our show, you can hear our podcast anytime. Just type in my name, Abe Abich, or Retirement Key Radio to iTunes, Spotify, or Google Play. And every single week, new content is uploaded to the podcast. In addition, we also have a YouTube series with probably about 60 to 70 different videos on all retirement planning topics. You can just go to youtube.com and search for Abich Financial Services. While you're here, to get a candid, unbiased view of modern retirement, what will we be covering? Well, in your PDF and workbooks, there are a bunch of different chapters there. Taxes, we're going to start off with first. Social Security, insurances, healthcare, long-term care, life insurance, estate planning, income needs, and financial tools. And again, I'm going to try to condense this presentation from about 2 hours, what is normally 2 hours, down to about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. Famous quote from John Bogle, former founder and CEO of the Vanguard Group of Vanguard. If I have learned anything in my 52 years in this marvelous field, it is that for a given individual or institution, the emotions of investing have destroyed far more potential investment returns than the economics of investing have ever dreamed of destroying. A good quote to really think about. And you know what? For the last at least several years, while the market was on a tear, we were preaching to everybody we come across, hey, get your monies in the right places now, because this bull run in the market is not going to last forever. And sure enough, it lasted 12 years. But in March of 2020, that bull market ended. And I think many people knew that it would. It was just a matter of time. But my point there is having your monies in the right places before these big upturns and downturns is the right way to invest, not to react after it's too late. Introduction, retirement today. I mentioned things are changing. This is not your grandparents' retirement. Interest rates. Look, the Federal Reserve lowered rates twice in March of 2020 to almost zero. And so now for anybody that has cash in the bank, anybody that owns government treasuries, CDs, money markets, checking savings, man, those interest rates are really, really low, which is going to make it really tough for savers that appreciate safety. I think for the next 2 to 5 years, interest rates are going to be really, really low, just like they were after 2008, to get this economy back up to where it was at the beginning of the year. Record-breaking market conditions, well, we saw that up until March of 2020 this year. We are now in volatility. And I think we will enter into a recession, which is 2 quarters of negative output. Global debt, geopolitical shifts. Look, nobody thought, I think very few people thought that a pandemic, that a virus would basically, have the world come to a screeching halt when it comes to the global economy. And sure enough, it did. Tax changes. The tax laws and codes changed in 2018. We'll talk about that. Shift in retirement plans. We'll talk about RMDs changing this year. The 2008 market crash seemed like so long ago until just a month ago when we incurred similar losses. Now, I know the market has rebounded the last few weeks, but I'll give you some insight. I'll give you what my insight is on what I think the market's going to do this year. Nobody knows what it's going to do, but if this bear market is anything like most prior bear markets, then what typically happens in a bear market is you have that big initial drop that no one expects, which happened in March. The S&P 500 lost 30%. Then you have what's called, in a bear market right after that, a head fake rebound. Think about this. The market's been back up the last 2 to 3 weeks, but is there that much positive news out there in the economy that the market just continues to go up after 30 million people are now unemployed? And now we're starting to hear about businesses go under. I think sometime in the second quarter and or third quarter of this year is when we'll truly hit a bottom and hit a low. And if this bear market is like any of the past bear markets, you typically have that big drop that takes everybody off guard, what's called a head fake rebound right after that, where the market does go back up. Some people start thinking, hey, we reached the bottom already, and then all of a sudden the market will drop again. And I believe the market will drop and hit its low sometime in between July to October of this year, when all of the horrible financial news comes out about just how many people are unemployed, how many businesses go under, and so forth. To give you an example, we host workshops at restaurants as well in the DC metro area, and one of the fine dining restaurants we host workshops at, we have heard that they may not open up again, period. This is a fine dining restaurant that's been around a long time. So I think more and more of those types of things will come out here in the upcoming months. So be prepared there for, I believe, what is going to be a significant drop in the stock market. There are many experts that are calling for the S&P 500 to drop down below 2,000 this year, which means for a 30% drop from where the S&P 500 is today in April of 2020. That would mean the S&P 500 would have lost more than 40% this year by the time this is all said and done. And I think there's very good potential that will happen. Just be prepared that that could happen. Okay, just a brief introduction. If you flip to page 2, actually page 3 in your textbook and in PDF, that's where I am in the book if you want to follow along. Some milestones when I talk in regards to retirement. Age 50, contribution limits change. What that means is basically at 50 and older, we're allowed to take advantage of what's called catch-up provisions. And if you're 50 and older, the government allows you to put more money into your 401ks and IRAs. At 55, some people actually have access to their 401k plans without any penalty and can take monies out. Most people, that's 59 and a half, but some companies 401ks allow for that at 55. Again, most people's 401k plans allow for a penalty-free rollover or transfer or of some or all of a 401k at 59 and a half. That's what the IRS calls you being age eligible and able to take out money of a pre-tax plan without that 10% penalty. At age 60, widows are eligible for a survivor Social Security benefit. At 62, that's the first age in which most people are able to take Social Security, although at a discounted rate and reduced rate. Some additional milestones, still on page 3 of the textbook. 65 and 66, access to full pension benefits. Many pensions out there don't offer the maximum pension benefit until age 65. Medicare kicks in at 65. Social Security benefits are higher. At 67, for anyone born in 1960 or after, the full retirement age is 67. When it comes to Social Security, which we'll talk about on today's webinar, I do believe full retirement age will continue to get pushed back because I think we are going to have some problems with the Social Security program in the near future. Age 70, the latest age in which you can take Social Security. No, you cannot wait till 71, 72, or 75. The maximum benefit is available at age 70. That doesn't mean it's best for you to wait till 70. Only 3% of the American population waits until 70 to take Social Security, so that should tell you something. 72, RMDs have changed. Required minimum distributions have changed. Two things. Number one, in December of 2019, Congress passed what's called the Secure Act, setting every community up for retirement enhancement. Part of that Secure Act was bumping RMD ages from 70 and a half to 72. So now, unless you are already taking RMDs and you are already 70 and a half or older in 2019 and prior, then you do not have to take RMDs out until age 72. Further, because of the coronavirus, in March of 2020, Congress came out with what's called the CARES package, the CARES stimulus package. And part of the CARES package is that no one in the country has an RMD due in the year 2020. Whether it's an inherited IRA or your own IRA or 401k, there is no required minimum distribution due, period, in the calendar year 2020. Once we hit 2021, everything, as far as we know, is going to be back to normal. Okay, let's talk about taxes. Section 1. Flip to page 7 and 8 of your workbooks. Here are some assumptions that aren't always true for retirement. I'll be in a lower tax bracket in retirement. My lifestyle costs will be lower. I'll just follow the 4% rule of thumb for my retirement. Let me address one of these. The first one, I'll be in a lower tax bracket in retirement. For many people, that is the furthest thing from the truth. And for many people, as you started to contribute to your 401k plans and retirement plans early in your career, you were told, max out your retirement accounts because in retirement, you're going to be in a lower tax bracket. Most people were told that. But for a lot of people, especially a lot of our clients, that is false. Think about why that would be false for you. Number one, you probably have your primary home paid off, so you've lost that tax deduction. Number two, you're not working anymore, so you've stopped maxing out your 401ks and company plans. Number three, the kids are out of the home, hopefully. Number four, the tax code has changed. 5, I mean, I could go on and on. Perhaps you have more savings than you thought you were going to have. You have a pension, annuities, investments, rental income, Social Security, and you're receiving more income in retirement than you were when you're working, and you have less tax deductions. So even if tax rates and brackets stay the same, if your income is higher and you have less deductions, you could be paying more in tax. So for a lot of people, they will be in a lower tax bracket in retirement because their incomes will be lower than their working incomes. For a lot of people, especially in the DC metro area, that is not true. And a lot of people are bringing in more income in retirement than they were when they were working. The new federal tax code. So we're on page 9 of the workbook, and you can follow along in the workbook and you'll see those numbers there on the PowerPoint screen. That's how to know what page of the textbook that we're on. So page 9. There was a shift in the tax brackets and tax code January 1st of 2018. And as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, those tax brackets now are 10, 12, 22, 24. In 2017 and prior, the 24% bracket was 28, the 22% bracket was 25, the 12% bracket was 15, and we believe taxes are on sale. Now, I always love it when my wife finds a good deal and you know, she goes to a store and she comes back home and finds something that's 50% off. I love that. Well, taxes are on sale, and the federal tax brackets have dropped, and the room in those brackets has increased. Take a look at that 24% bracket right there for those of you that are married watching this webinar. And that tax bracket goes from $168,401 to $321,450. So what if you're a married couple in the DC metro area earning $200,000 a year? Well, the IRS is telling you you can bring in up to $321,450 and still stay in the same tax bracket and still pay 24% in tax. You can make another $121,000 and still stay in that same tax bracket. And we believe as a firm that 24% is a very fair tax rate. 22, 12, man, extremely fair, reasonable tax rates. And we believe taxes can only go up from here. Just like interest rates. Interest rates are at all-time, again, historic lows. Interest rates can almost only go back up. Just like the market went on a 12-year bull run, we had been preaching for years that the market had to drop, had to correct at some point. Sure enough, it has this year. Same with taxes. One of the big reasons why we believe federal income taxes will be higher in the next 5 or 10 years, 15 years from now, is because we're in $23 trillion of national debt as a country, and we just pumped into the economy trillions of dollars into the economy to help stabilize the economy and to help small businesses and corporations survive this pandemic. So now we're throwing more money at the problems, and the country's national debt is going to just continue to balloon. At some point, we believe firmly that somebody's going to have to pay for that debt. And one of the ways to tackle that debt is to raise taxes. So be prepared for tax increases. And if you have the potential to purposely pay tax now at very fair rates, then you may want to consider things like a Roth conversion, which we'll talk more about as we move on. Okay, so in this new federal tax code, you know, Congress came out with this new federal tax code to basically simplify the tax code. And they came out with this tax code to really encourage people to use the standard deductions. And I believe most people are. However, there's still a lot of misinformation out there about the tax code, and 50% of Americans believe one thing and 50% of Americans believe another. For example, this is a classic example right here. How important is just one extra dollar in income, and how would that affect your taxes? Well, the largest tax bracket jump is from 12% to 22. So what would happen if your income is $78,951, which is the top dollar in the 12% bracket, and then you make one extra dollar? What would happen? Would that bump you up into the 22% bracket? Well, 50% of Americans believed when the survey was polled that they would be bumped up into that 22% bracket and all of their income would be taxed at 22%. The other 50% of Americans realize that, hey, our tax system is progressive and just that next dollar will be taxed at the 22% tax rate, but the $78,951 will be taxed at the 12% tax bracket and rate, and that is true. We utilize what's called tax mapping reports. One of the wealthiest families that ever walked through our doors came in with about $20 million. And they were extremely happy with their financial advisor firm that they were working with. But that financial advisor firm never talked to them about how taxes would impact their retirement. And folks, taxes are our biggest expense in retirement. So how can we ignore taxes. And we need to make sure that we're paying our fair share, but that we're paying as little as tax as possible. So we utilize what's called tax mapping reports, okay? And part of the lab session is to create a personalized tax mapping report for you. And in that tax mapping report, it'll look like that on the screen, one of many charts, is we'll put in your Social Security, your annuities, your pensions, your working income, rental income, dividend income. We'll put all of your income into the report. We'll see exactly where you are in your current bracket and how much room we have in your bracket to potentially do something like a Roth conversion. Because if you believe taxes are going to be higher down the road, as do we, then you could potentially be paying more taxes down the road than today. We're not saying take the money out and spend it. We're saying pay your fair share now, potentially, pull monies out of pre-taxed accounts like a 401k or IRA and convert them into Roth IRAs so that you eliminate taxes forever and you eliminate RMDs forever. And that's something that we help our clients with and we can work with you on in the lab session. Standard deductions are a big change. We are on page, let's see here. Well, it looks like the same page. But standard deductions have changed in a big way, and most people are utilizing the standard deductions now. And if you're a married couple filing jointly and you're in your 60s, 65 or older, the first $27,000, $28,000 of your income is totally tax-free, because that's just the standard deduction. If you're single and 65 or older, the first $14,000 or $15,000 of your income is tax-free. Federal income tax deductions in retirement. Interest on mortgages still remain. Retirement planning contributions into 401ks, 403bs, IRAs, SEP IRAs. Taxes through history, page 11 of your workbook. Here's another big reason why we think taxes pretty much can only go up, and that's because if you take a look at federal income taxes in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, look how high they were. I mean, you're talking about over 90% for the highest federal income tax earners. Now, in the 40s, you had to be earning over $200,000 a year, so there were probably very few people that were actually doing that. But if you were being taxed at over 90%. That top part of your income was taxed at 90%. Take a look at where they are today. From the early 80s to now, they pretty much leveled out in between 20 to 40%, which are really fair tax rates. So if tax rates were that high then, yes, we had world wars and different things going on, but we didn't have $23 trillion of national debt as we do today. Take a look at where they are today and ask yourself, do you think taxes could go back up? Maybe they don't go back to peer. God, I hope not. But they certainly could go back up to 30, 35, 40, So take a look at that. Interest rates on public debt. Many of the experts out there were calling for this next recession and downturn in the market because of the massive amount of debt that corporations hold right now. And whenever interest rates do start going back up, which I think is going to be a long time from now, there could be some problems with corporations going under because they may not be able to foot that bill anymore. Interest rates have significantly dropped again. The Federal Reserve came in and basically threw everything at the economy. There are some resources they have left, but they came in quickly and lowered rates twice down to almost zero, just like they did after 2008 to stimulate the economy again, to rescue the economy. And that was helpful, but I just don't think it's going to be enough. The point here, though, is that, hey, the 10-year Treasury yield is down under 1%. The other day it was 0.6%. 2 years ago in 2018, it was over 3%. The 30-year Treasury yield is at 1.2, 1.3%. That was well over 3% 2 years ago. It's getting tougher and tougher to earn anything decent on really, really safe conservative investments. Tax-deferred accounts in your retirement, page 13 of the workbook. Many pre-retirees and retirees have some type of tax-deferred accounts, 401ks, 403bs, TSPs for those of you that are former government employees or current government employees, SEP IRAs for those of you that are self-employed and business owners, traditional IRAs. These accounts are going to be taxed at whatever the federal income tax rate is when you start receiving income from them. You haven't paid a penny of tax on all that money you put into the account, so naturally you'll pay taxes at ordinary income when you start pulling money out. Two different types of taxes you will incur in retirement: ordinary income and then Social Security taxation. Believe it or not, Social Security is taxed differently when Social Security is started, and we'll talk about that as well. Key takeaways, page 14 of the textbook and PDF. The tax deductions that apply during your working years may no longer apply in retirement. Refresher, most of our clients' homes, primary homes, are paid off, so you've lost that interest right off. If you're retired and you're not working anymore, you're not maxing out your accounts. Hey, if you're married and both of you are maxing out your 401ks, that's $50,000 a year in tax deductions that are now gone. So your house is paid off, you're not working anymore, so you're not maxing out your company plans, the kids are out of the home, and other deductions are gone that were available in the prior tax code. Now we have higher standard deductions, but a lot of other deductions are gone, like personal exemptions and other things. Federal income tax rates are low and could increase in the future. Lower interest rates could mean higher taxes in the future. Your tax-deferred accounts are taxed as regular income when distributed in retirement. Again, one of the takeaways here from the tax chapter is that in the lab session, we do offer what we call a personalized tax mapping report. We're not CPAs or accountants. We're not going to do your taxes for you. Instead, we're looking out 10, 20, 30, 40 years into your retirement accounts and giving you insight as to how taxes are going to play a role on your retirement dollars. Okay, moving right along to chapter 2, Social Security. Brief history of Social Security, page 17 in your workbooks and PDFs. August 14, 1935, FDR signed Social Security into law. I can't remember the lady's first name, but it was a lady who received her first check, and I think it was for $100 or $200. It might be listed here in the workbook. When Social Security first started in 1935, all of the benefits were tax-free, no taxation on benefits. In addition, there were 16 workers for every one person receiving a check. 16 people in the workforce for every one person receiving a check. Now there are only 3 people in the workforce for every one person receiving a check. And 100% of all Social Security benefits that are received from current tax revenue. There is no more Social Security trust fund. We robbed Peter to pay Paul, and the Social Security trust fund was withdrawn from and used to pay for other things. So there is no money left in the Social Security program. All current Social Security benefits are paid out by current tax revenue. That's a problem. And by 2034, just 14 years from today, less than that, if nothing changes, then if you haven't read it on your Social Security statements, there are going to be changes, and benefits are scheduled to be reduced by about 20 to 22%. Meaning, if you were scheduled to receive $1,000 a month in Social Security and nothing in the program changes, you may only receive $780 or $800 of that $1,000 that you're currently receiving or will receive in the near future. Now, I do believe Social Security was a huge promise to all of American citizens, and I do believe that the program will exist and will be around for the rest of our lives. I'm just not 100% confident that it won't be unchanged for the rest of our lives. I do believe there will be changes. Hopefully they make changes to my generation first, because I'm 25 to 30 years away before, or 22, 23 years away before even being eligible. So hopefully they'll make changes to the younger generations first, push full retirement ages back from 67 to maybe 70, 72, 75, which will allow for people currently receiving benefits or for those people that are about to receive benefits to have their benefits remain unchanged. That's my hope. Okay, in '83, that was the first year in which Congress passed an amendment saying, hey, you can't receive your Social Security benefits tax-free anymore. Up to 50% now, starting in 1983, of your Social Security benefits can be taxed depending on your income thresholds. In 1993, Congress said, wait a minute, just 50% of your check being taxed at your ordinary income tax bracket, that's not enough. Let's tax up to 85% of it. Not at an 85% tax rate, but at your ordinary income tax rate. So what that means is, if you over certain income thresholds and your check is $1,000, then $850 of that $1,000 will be taxed at your ordinary income tax rate, which might be 12, 22, or 24, and only 15% of your benefit would be tax-free. That is true for most Americans. In 2018, 62 million people currently receive benefits, with 47 million of those being 65 and older. That's why I hope for baby boomers and those people 65 plus, that benefits remain unchanged. Here are the income thresholds I just referenced. If you're in retirement and you're single and your total income is $34,000 or less, I'm sorry, $25,000 or less, then your Social Security income is 100% tax-free. If your income is in between $25,000 and $34,000 and you're single, then you can see right there on the screen, 50% of your Social Security income will be taxed. And if you're single and just have $34,000 or more in income, then 85% of your Social Security income will be taxed at your ordinary income tax bracket, which again might be 12, 22, 24%. If you're married filing jointly and your total income is $32,000 or less, then your Social Security income is tax-free. If it's in between 32 and 44, 50% of your Social Security income is taxed at your ordinary income tax bracket. And if you're married filing jointly and you have more than $44,000 of income, which, look, I don't know how you can be married and live in the DC metro area and not have at least $44,000 in income. But if you do, as most people do, then 85% of your household Social Security benefits will be taxed at your ordinary income tax rate, and only 15% of your Social Security benefits will be tax-free. Okay, moving along here, we are on page 19. And let's go through an example of Joe and Ann. Typical couple here, they've got pension income of $30,000. They've got RMDs coming in about $30,000. Half of their household Social Security benefits are $20,000. Total household income, $80,000. Okay, let's look at the tax ramification here as it pertains to Social Security. Okay, so as we see there, their total household income is $80,000. That's more than 44. So 85% of their Social Security income will be taxed. Let's take a further look. 40,000 times 85%, that's 85% of their Social Security, is 34,000. 34,000 at a 22% tax bracket is 7,480. 40,000 in total Social Security benefits minus 7,480 is a net 32,520. That would be their net Social Security income, and 85% of their check is taxed at 22% because they were over that $44,000 threshold. And that was determined by Congress. We didn't get to vote on that as citizens. Congress just said, hey, you're 34,000 and over single, you're 44,000 and over married, your Social Security income will be taxed. I don't think it's fair. That's double taxation. That's taxation on your benefits as you work. Every single paycheck, money comes out for Social Security, FICA, Medicare while you're working. And then when you retire, you're receiving the check and you got to pay taxes on it again. I definitely don't think that's fair. But unfortunately, we didn't get to vote on that. It just is what it is at this point. And there is the chart there. Over 78,950, but not over 168,4, and that couple falls right in that range. Outlook on Social Security, I kind of mentioned this already. I don't think the outlook for Social Security is very favorable. And in a 2017 annual report and on everybody's statements, I have most of it memorized. It says the Social Security Administration needs to provide a foundation of protection for future generations. And by the year 2034, they will only be able to pay out 78 cents for every dollar of scheduled benefit. 3 years ago was 75 cents. for every scheduled dollar of benefit. And today it's 78 cents for every dollar of scheduled benefit if nothing changes by 2034. So we're fully funded through 2034, or I guess the current tax revenue coming in will be enough to pay out benefits for the next 14 years. But come 2035, something's got to change. Otherwise, benefits may be reduced and probably will. Page 21 of your workbook. Cost of living adjustments, page 24 of your workbook. What we found, we actually just ran the numbers here recently at our firm. We found the last 20 years, going back to 1990, the year 2000, that the average annual Social Security cost of living adjustment was 2%. Now, some years it's more, some months it's more, some it's less. In January of 2020, the Social Security adjustment was 1.6. For 2019, as you can see there on the screen, it was 2.8. And there have been years, you can see there on your screen, 2016 it was 0, 2017 it was almost 0, 2011 it was 0, 2010 it was 0. And so some years it's 0, some years it's over 2. The last 20 years it's averaged 2%, and that's the cost of living adjustment we will give to our clients in our retirement income plans that we build for our clients. And we can put that together in the lab session part of this class. How is my Social Security benefit calculated? That's on page 25. There's a formula that they use. They use the age to begin to collect benefits, and then the calculation is based on the highest 35 years of earnings on which you paid Social Security payroll tax. So there is a formula, and the longer you work and the more your income is, the more your benefit's going to be. However, your benefits are maxed at a certain point, and where you reach the maximum amount of benefits is as a single person. If you're earning about 130 to 135,000 a year or more, you max out benefits. And so for anybody, I said single, but for anybody, once you reach about 130 to 135,000 dollars of working income, you will max out your benefits. The highest benefits we see are typically around 2,000 a month at 62, around 3,000 a month at full retirement age, and around 3,600 to 3,700 a month at age 70. Those are about the highest benefits that we see, and that would be for high income earners. When should I claim Social Security? Well, if anybody knew when to claim, then you would probably be a trillionaire if we could give everybody that answer. But we don't know when we're going to pass away, and that's one of the biggest things to try to figure out the best you can is your life expectancy. How long are you going to live? There is not a standard answer as to when is best to take Social Security for everybody, because everybody's lives are different. We had a gentleman come to a workshop years ago, and he said, you know what, Abe, until I listened to your presentation tonight, I always thought that waiting till 70 was best for everybody to take benefits because your benefit's the largest. Well, yeah, your benefit is the largest, but what if you die of a heart attack at 72? What if you die at 75? What if you die at age 80? It would have been way better to take benefits at 65, 66, maybe even 62. Look at it this way. If you take benefits at 62 and you pass away before age 82, then you won the game. And it would have been best to take benefits at 62. If, however, you can wait to 65, 66, and you live past age 82, age 83, then you would have been better off waiting to 65, 66. And if you wait till 70, only 3% of Americans wait till age 70 to take Social Security. You better live a long time. And for men need to live to their late 80s, 87, 88. Women need to live to 90 and beyond to make it worth waiting till 70. So keep that in mind when you are electing when to take Social Security. Look at your current health. Look at how long your family lives. Look at, do you need the income? Are you working? Maybe you don't even need the income. Look at the program as a whole. You know, a lot of our clients come in and they're not 100% certain that the program is going to remain unchanged for the rest of their lives. So they say, hey, as soon as I'm able, I'm going to take the benefit right now. I'm going to go ahead and grab it and take it. You know, so there are a lot of things you need to take into consideration, interest rates, and we have Social Security planning software where we can put your birthdays into that software and really give you the real raw numbers you can look at, not just guess at what age is best for you, but look at the numbers year after year to help you determine when it is best for you to take Social Security. Now, if you were born in 1937 or earlier, full retirement age is 65. For a lot of our clients, full retirement age is in between is 66, and that would be for those of you that were born in between 43 and 54. And then if you were born in 1960 or after, full retirement age is 67. For every year between 54 and 60, which is a lot of our clients and a lot of baby boomers, for every year there, 55, 56, 57, 58, the government tacked on 2 more months to full retirement age. That doesn't mean you need to wait those 2 months or 4 months. You can take your benefit at 66 or 65. It's just going to be a slightly reduced benefit, because every year we are able to defer and delay that benefit. It grows by a guaranteed roughly 8% per year. The break-even point, well, that's typically about 12 to 13 years out. Okay, so you want to run the numbers. You want to get that run in a Social Security action plan. You want to look at your entire financial situation, your health, and all the things we just discussed to determine when is best for you. And we can give you all that information to help you make an informed, educated financial decision. Just don't wing it, because winging it could potentially cost you thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars over the rest of your life if you mess up and don't choose it at the best age for you. Okay, we are going to, you know what? I'm going to mention one thing when it comes to spousal benefits. We're on page 29 right now of the textbook. One thing I'm going to mention is that the lowest spousal benefit has to be equal to at least 50% of the higher spousal benefit at the same age. So, give you an example. We had a couple come in from a pretty well-known financial advisor and investment firm here in the last few years. And the gentleman's Social Security benefit was around $2,600 a month. And the wife's Social Security benefit was around $700 a month. Okay, so hers was way less than half of his. Half of his would have been $1,300 a month, which is half of $2,600. They were both 66 when they filed. And although they were getting great investment advice from the firm that they were working with, they got no advice on Social Security or anything other than their investments. And what they didn't know is that the wife was eligible for another $600 a month in spousal benefit. The Social Security Administration is just not going to give you that $600 a month. You have to know the rules to the game. You have to know that information and say, hey, wait a minute, aren't I supposed to be eligible for 50% of the highest benefit if filed at the same age? Absolutely you are. We turned that couple on to $600 a month that they weren't getting before. That might not sound like a lot. That's $7,200 a year. And if they live another 20 years, if she lives another 20 years, that's over 150 grand. That's now in their pockets instead of the government's that they deserve and they earn. That's their money and they didn't know about it. Okay, receiving benefits from ex-spouses, we're on page 30 of the workbook. You must be at least 62, although widowers can receive a widow's benefit at age 60. So for ex-spouses, you've got to be married at least 10 years. You aren't entitled to a higher benefit on your own. You have not remarried. Your ex-spouse is also eligible to receive benefits, meaning they have to be at least 62. Your ex-spouse's benefits will not be affected, and they won't affect benefits paid to other family members either. So we have that situation come up a lot. Again, if you have any questions as we're going through this webinar, just drop those questions into the digital chat. We have several team members standing by ready to help you get those questions answered. And then if they can't answer them specifically, that's what the second part of this course is meant for, the lab session where we can basically put all this information together for you and answer all of your questions specific to your situation. Okay, working after claiming benefits, we're on page 31. Basically, if you're working and receiving benefits and you are receiving benefits in between age 62 and full retirement age, which for a lot of people is 65, 66, then you cannot earn more than $18,000 a year. Otherwise, 50% of your benefit will be withheld. It's not penalized. You will get that money back as soon as you hit full retirement age. But if you have basically retired, you're working very part-time, even though if you're earning more than $18,000 a year and receiving Social Security, 50% of your benefit will be withheld. $1 for every 2 above the limit. Again, that will be paid back in a lump sum once you hit full retirement age. And once you hit full retirement age, which for most people watching this webinar is 65 to 66, maybe 66 and some change, then you can earn all the money in the world and receive your entire Social Security benefit without any dollar withheld. Social Security takeaways, page 32. Social Security was created to help retirees and aging adults receive income after working. Social Security benefits can be taxed up to 85%, depending on your income level. And for most people that we work with and help in our retail practice, that is the deal for them. The average inflation increase we have seen on Social Security benefits the last 20 years is 2%. Taking benefits before full retirement age can reduce benefits by up to 30%. We didn't talk about that, but basically everybody should know if you take benefits early and you don't let them grow, there's going to be a big reduction in benefits. Spouses can claim up to 50% of their spouse's benefit. Retirees can work and still receive a reduced Social Security benefit. Okay, we're not going to take a break. We're going to continue right through. Section 3, healthcare, long-term care, and life insurance. Okay, so most people know that we need to plan for healthcare and retirement, and the average retired couple in 2018 needed to put aside 280 grand for healthcare expenses. Otherwise, that 280 grand was going to come out of their resources. So that is the average healthcare expense over a couple's lifetime is about 280 grand. There are many ways to tackle this, and we'll talk about it right now. People are living longer than ever before. 7 in 10 Americans live past 65 and older. I had a grandma live to 95 years old. My wife's grandfather lived to 96. We have clients come in all the time and say, yeah, my mother is still 85, 90. My grandmother's still alive and she's 99. My great-grandmother's still alive and she's 103. People are living longer and longer, and we need to plan for that. And with the advancements in medical technology, with the way we're eating nowadays, everything is getting healthier and healthier. We're living longer, and we need to plan for that. Medicare Part A, we're on page 35, is going to cover this is the base part of the plan. So when you sign up for Medicare, you're first eligible at 65. This is the base part of the plan. It is what is given to you for being an American citizen and for being 65 years or older. Inpatient hospital care, skilled nursing facility care, surgery, all the major stuff. Part B, you have to buy on your own. Part B and Part D. Part B and D are supplements, and Part B covers everything that Part A doesn't cover. Doctors, providers, ambulance trips, mental health services, preventative services, and Part D is your prescriptions. So any medicines you're taking, those are going to be covered by Part D, and those are supplements that you're going to want to sign up for if you haven't already by the time you turn 65, if you're not already covered on another health plan. As soon as you retire and you're off of that company health plan, you're going to want to get on Medicare and get on these supplements. Medigap, MedAdvantage, Medicare supplements. That's a Part B and Part D we just talked about. Health savings accounts. These are available, page 38, for high deductible health insurance plans. We have one here at our retail practice, and my wife and I take advantage of maxing out our HSAs. And if a retirement plan, if a retirement account looked and acted like an HSA does, it would be the perfect retirement account. Here's why. Any money you put in, you can fully deduct. So for a married couple, I believe you can put in around $7,000 a year. That's 100% tax deductible. Then once you put the money in, it can grow tax deferred and tax free and be taken out entirely tax free if used for a health expense. That can be acupuncture, chiropractic, massage, all kinds of health related things. I used part of my HSA for Invisalign and teeth treatment. And so there's no retirement account that exists where you can deduct 100% of the money you put in and receive it all tax-free on the back end. Basically, that's like combining a pre-taxed account and a Roth, and those two in one don't exist. But that's exactly how an HSA works, as long as all the money you put in is used for a health expense. We know we're all going to use the money for health expenses at some point, so if you can take advantage of an HSA, I highly recommend you do so. Long-term care, page 39. Long-term care insurance is standalone insurance you can purchase on your own for a potential long-term care event. Now, I will tell you that most financial advisors don't recommend purchasing standalone long-term care anymore, because policies today aren't anywhere near what they were 10, 15 years ago. The biggest companies in the industry don't even offer the coverage anymore. Genworth was the #1 long-term care provider for the longest time. And although they kept all their current policyholders on the books, they are not offering long-term care anymore, period, for someone that wants to buy a new policy right now. That should tell you something. John Hancock, another huge industry player in the long-term care space, raised rates on a lot of policyholders by as much as 80%, and that's because healthcare costs down the road are totally unpredictable. So for that reason, one of many reasons, most financial advisors don't recommend purchasing standalone long-term care insurance. Also, rates can go up on you at any time, and then you can be in a pickle determining whether, hey, do I keep this coverage at the increased rate? Do I reduce my coverage and pay the same rate? Those are tough decisions you may have to make. And finally, you can only use the benefits for long-term care. So if you want to cash out and receive a chunk of money and stop paying and receive a chunk of money, that's typically not an option. There's no death benefit, there's no growth of your money. It can only be used for long-term care. And although the chances are high that you will need long-term care, there are a lot of people who die of accidents, a lot of people who die of natural causes and really quickly within maybe 90 days and could have paid thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars of premiums and never used the policy. For that inflexibility, if you have not purchased standalone long-term care insurance yet, we would recommend that you probably don't, and instead look at other alternatives. If you do have standalone long-term care insurance, then those policies are going to follow this definition. And if you are unable to perform 2 out of the 6 activities of daily living, bathing, dressing, continence, eating, dressing, transferring, moving from chair to chair, if you can't do at least 2, then you qualify for that benefit. And some policies will have a nurse come out to your home. Some policies only pay for nursing home care, adult daycare. You really want to take a look at the coverage you have. We can help you sort through that coverage if you do have it and you have questions about it. But that's a standard definition right there as to if somebody is eligible to file a claim. Yeah, you got to be unable to perform 2 of those 6 ADLs. Types of life insurance. Okay, moving on to page 42 and 43 in the book. So we've got term life, okay? And basically the way I like to define it is that there are only really 2 kinds of life insurance, and in the second kind or type, there are three variations. So the first type is term life. You can see it there on the screen. And the second type we call permanent, and that can consist of whole life, universal life, or indexed universal life. Okay, term life insurance, long story short, is like renting an apartment. Whole life, universal life, indexed universal life is like owning a home. Is owning a home more expensive? Yes. But is it more valuable? Are you building equity? Are there tax deductions? Is there much more financial gain from owning a home long-term than renting? Most of the times, absolutely. And that's the difference between term and permanent. So term is designed to last you for a period of time, 10, 20, 30 years. It's great for young families when you have a lot of debt, mortgages, kids are in the home, and it typically expires when a lot of people need it the most, which is at 60, 65, 70, 75. So insurance companies came out with permanent life insurance, which is designed to last you the rest of your life. And you'll pay a premium today, which is more expensive than term, but that lasts you for the next 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. For myself, that coverage is going to last me the next 60 years. I'm 40 at the same rate as I'm paying today the rest of my life. I'm building equity, I'm building cash value in my policies, which is all tax-free, by the way. And then in addition, in a lot of these life insurance policies today, they do offer long-term care and other ancillary benefits that allow you to use the entire death benefit while you're alive. And these are the types of policies that we recommend, if possible, to address long-term care. So term and permanent, like renting and owning a home, those are the differences. Personally, I own a combination of the two, but for most people that are older, 65, 70, 75, a lot of baby boomers like permanent life insurance, like coverage that they can depend on the rest of their life without the premiums going up, with built-in long-term care and other ancillary benefits, tax-free cash values, etc. Okay, I know I skipped through that insurance section pretty quickly, but I think we're about an hour into the presentation, and I want to try to get through the last, I think we have about 2 chapters left here, 3 chapters, so I want to try to get through this here pretty quickly. Section 4, estate planning. Estate planning is one of the most important parts of the retirement planning process, yet only 1 in 3 American families has a will and a trust done and set up. We partner with an estate planning firm. They can meet with you right now over the phone and video. Typically, they come into our office. They host presentations all over the Virginia, DC, Maryland area. And estate planning and getting your estate in order is extremely important. Don't ignore that, because you've worked for 30, 40, 50 years to do everything you can to make sure you and your families are financially secure in retirement. The last thing you want is to die unexpectedly, to become sick unexpectedly, and have your family scrambling to get everything lined up for you. You want to get all those things lined up before something happens. And so we highly recommend getting your estate planning work set up and plans set up. In an estate plan, you can be very specific about who the money goes to, when the money goes to your family members, why it goes to them, how it goes to them. It can be set aside for college education, paying off a house, supplement your spouse's income, for your grandkids, for whatever reason. You could say, you know what, I want to give Johnny this amount of money at 21 to buy his first car. I want to give Susie this amount of money when she gets married to buy her first home. And in a living trust, you can be very specific and dictate exactly what you want to have happen. A lot of people think they do not need trusts. And I'll give you one example of many as to why you might want to consider getting one. And one of those is, if you have children and those children get divorced, you may not want your children's ex-spouse to get a penny of what you're going to pass on to your children. Most people wouldn't, because they're now out of your lives and out of your children's lives. Well, if you don't have a trust set up and you have money in line to be given to your children, and you passed away, that ex-spouse is entitled to 50% of your children's benefits. And if you have a trust, you can basically cut people out and be very specific and dictate exactly what you want to have happen. Estate planning is very important. And here are some basic workbooks. You know, these these are in the workbook. Just questions for you to start asking yourselves. Do you have a healthcare directive, a power of attorney, prenuptial agreement? Do you have a will? And if you don't, man, now's a perfect time to be working on this. Basic terms, I'm going to skip over these because a lot of these are basic. Will, probate. Probate is the court process that people go through when you don't have a trust. When you have a trust, you avoid probate, which is the court and legal process. Your assets are not public record anymore, which they are when you don't have a trust, and all of your information is private, and exactly what you have dictated in the trust happens. You avoid time delays, you avoid attorney fees, and all those things by having things set up properly before something happens. That's the whole purpose of retirement planning in general anyways, to prepare in advance. Choosing beneficiaries. I mean, look, now is a great time while we're at home. Most of us are at home to be looking at your life insurance policies, your 401ks, your IRAs. How's your house titled? Making sure everything's titled and that your beneficiaries are updated to the current people you want them to pass on to. Maybe it's been 5, 10, 20 years since you've looked at your beneficiary designations. Okay, I skipped through that pretty quickly, but I think most people get the point there. Estate planning is very important. Number 5, income planning. Look, when it comes to retirement is all about income. Income is what makes the world go round, okay? And in retirement especially. So think about this. You work for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. All you focused on is accumulating enough money to generate enough income for you in retirement. Now that mindset and that plan has to switch from an accumulation solely focused plan to an income focused plan. Because after all, your working paychecks have stopped. We've got to replace those working paychecks with income from annuities, CDs, stocks, pensions, Social Security, rental income. To make sure you have enough income coming in. So many people don't realize that until we start working together with them and say, oh, wait a minute, this is how you're different. This is how you're different, because most financial advisors are accumulation advisors. And there's nothing wrong with being an accumulation advisor or having someone you work with that's helping you with accumulation. But if you have a plan that's solely focused on accumulation, you've missed out on 50% of the plan. And as you transition into retirement, the income phase and part of your plan is just as important, if not more important. So really, that's what we do. And in my retail practice, we basically put together all this information that you have, all of your financial junk, we call it, into an actionable retirement income plan that you can follow, a roadmap year after year into retirement. Truly have something to follow. You see all that on the screen: Social Security, annuities, RMDs, rental income, dividends, all of this we'll put into an income plan so you know exactly what's coming in, adjusted for inflation, the rest of your life. Here are some common risks on page 55 of your workbook that we need to address in retirement. Longevity, that's outliving your money. You don't want to do that. Or living too long and your money running out. Inflation, we want to make sure that our income is keeping up with inflation. And when we're putting together these plans, we have inflation at 2.5%. And then we're looking out 20, 30, 40 years into our clients' 90s at least to make sure that the income they're generating is keeping up with inflation, and almost all the time it is. Market risk, we can't ignore that. And obviously in 2020, it's a classic example of how, man, 2019, the S&P was up 30%. It took 1 year and it took 12 years for the market to get up to its peaks, and just 1 month for the S&P 500 to lose just as much. Now, the market has rebounded in the last few weeks, and that's what I called earlier a head fake rebound, because what is more than likely to happen this year in the bear market is for us to have another significant drop before we hit the low. And I think that low will be early to late fall of 2020. Be prepared for that. The market will continue to go up and down the rest of your life. But if you're suffering a 20, 30, 40 or more % drop in your investments right before you retire or right into retirement, that would be devastating. So getting your monies in the right places before that type of event happens is so important. Tax risk, we've talked about that. Healthcare risk, we've talked about that. Relationship risks, sudden change risks. CV19, I mean, that is a classic example of a sudden change risk that the whole world did not know was coming. So we'll go through every single income source. Our clients will go through a detailed budget and come up with a very accurate number as to what they are spending every month. We'll find out what their discretionary expenses are and what their non-discretionary expenses are. Those expenses that will never change the rest of your life, and those expenses that will. Perhaps you 1 year take a really nice vacation and the next year you don't. Well, that's a discretionary expense. But your non-discretionary expenses, are the expenses that should be coming in every month from income that's guaranteed. That's annuities, that's Social Security, that's pensions, that's very reliable, dependable, predictable income that's coming into the mailbox every month. That's how you want to have that income floor created. Once your income floor is created and your non-discretionary expenses are met, then the rest can be met through investments and other income streams. That's how we plan. Okay, so these are basic budgeting sheets. Sequence of returns, we're on page 59 of the workbook. Let me tell you that sequence of returns is a risk that most people have not heard about, and that's because sequence of returns risk, or sequence risk, is not relevant at all when you're working and saving and putting money into your retirement plans. But it is of extreme importance and relevance when you're in the income phase of retirement, when you stop working and you are receiving income for yourselves in retirement. Here's why. Sequence risk is the risk to any retiree that when the stock market's down at the same time that you're withdrawing money out of your portfolio, you have a double negative, maybe even a triple negative. What are those negatives? The loss in the market. Right now in late April 2020, the S&P is down about 10%. So you got a loss in the market. If you're pulling money out for RMDs or retirement income, that's a double negative. And then that's not including the fees that you're paying to the financial advisor firm or the fees in your mutual funds or index funds. Potential triple negative that can crush the retirement values and can crush your investments if that happens early in retirement. And guess what? We can't control that. We can't control when the market returns come. They're going to go up and down. We can't control when they come, but we can control how we invest and where the monies are. That's a very important risk that you want to protect yourself against. Let me give you a classic example. Basically, here's the market. Here's the S&P from 2000 to 2018. And here's a tech bubble. Here's 2008. 2018, the market was down. 2019, the market was up 30%. And we're down 10% as it stands right now. If you put $250,000 into the S&P in the year 2000, from 2000 to 2018, and if you took out 4% of that number, that's actually 5%, I believe, $12,500 per year. If you withdrew that out every year, your ending balance would be $237,500. I'm sorry, your ending balance would be $9,768. And that's because of the tech bubble loss and that 2008 loss. But other financial instruments are available. And this instrument on the right is a fixed indexed annuity. And this is comparing a fixed indexed annuity to the stock market and S&P 500 on the left. So here you have a fixed indexed annuity where when the market is down anything, you get a big fat zero. You don't lose a penny. You may not make anything, but you don't lose anything. So we replace the losses with a zero. Okay, here's a tech bubble. We get 3 zeros. Here's 2008. We get a big zero. And typically in fixed index annuities, you earn about 50% of the market upside. So the market's up 26, we're up 13 over here. The market's up 9 over here, we're up 4.5 over here. And we're taking the same $12,500 out every year. Look at the ending balance in the fixed index annuity versus the S&P 500. In the S&P 500, 18 years into your retirement, you have $10,000 left in your account. In the fixed index annuity, you have $203,000 left. That's because we suffered no losses, even after getting modest returns, just 50% of the S&P 500. That should tell you something, folks. And what that tells us as a firm in our retail practice is that the losses are far more damaging in retirement than the 20 or 30% returns are beneficial. We believe avoiding losses is the #1 thing to plan for in retirement. And that's one of many things that we help our clients with. Okay. We're going to skip through a couple of things here. I believe I addressed this already, but I'll address it again. Page 65 of the workbook, and then I think we have 1 chapter left. RMDs have changed in a big way for 2020. There are no RMDs due for calendar year 2020 for anyone. And in December 2019, Congress passed what's called the Secure Act So starting next year again, RMDs will be due, but only for those people that are 72 and older. And technically that first RMD is due by April 1st following the year you turn 72. Okay, so you might actually be 73 by the time you take your first RMD for some of you. Now, if you do wait till April 1st following the year you turn 72, in that year you will have 2 RMDs due. So just be prepared for that. And here's a uniform calculation table that's right on the IRS website. And I can give you those percentages here real quickly. At age 72, you have to take out about 4% of your accounts. At 75, you have to take out about 4.5% of your accounts. At age 80, you have to take out about 5.35% of your accounts. And at age 90, you have to take out over 8% of your retirement accounts, whether you want to or not. So really, at 72 and beyond, you better be earning 4% or more on those IRA and 401k assets. Otherwise, simple math tells you your balances will go down. Okay. Here are some contribution limits. Those are right in your workbooks. Rule of 100, very important concept. Very simple financial planning concept, but important, which a lot of people don't know about. The rule of 100, you take 100 minus your age, and that equals the amount that you should be invested in the market if you are following the rule of 100 to a T. This is just a financial tool that one can use to give you a decent idea as to how much risk you should be taking versus not. So if you're 60 years old, you take 100 minus 60, that equals 40. Perhaps that means for you that only 40% of your money should be at risk. And 60% of it should be safe because you are 60 and you are retiring maybe within 5 years. You may say, well, Abe, you know, I'm a 6 on that scale. I can handle 60% of my money being at risk in the market. Well, fine. You got 60% of your money at risk, 40% of your money safe with downside protection, safety, and so forth. But you certainly don't want to have 100% of your money in the market if you're getting near retirement. So that's a good rule of thumb to use. Annuities, page 71. Annuities are, they are a topic of retirement planning that a lot of people misunderstand. There's a lot of misinformation about annuities out there. And long story short, when anything bad is said about an annuity, typically it stems from number 1 here, immediate annuities, and number 4, variable annuities. These ones here have high fees. They will go down when the market goes down. Typically, when anything good is said about annuities, it comes from number 2 and number 3. Fixed annuities are like CDs, but they pay higher interest. Fixed index annuities, the growth is typically in between 4 to 7%. Zero's the floor. You can't lose a penny when the market goes down. And we use fixed index annuities in our retail practice a lot for people who want an alternative to bonds, treasuries, cash, who want to reduce their stock risks down, etc. Annuities certainly have pros and cons, and we can help you sort through that if you own one or are looking for the benefits of an annuity that an annuity can offer you. Okay, we're gonna skip this here and go to the last chapter because I think we are now about an hour and 15 minutes in. And so I believe it's chapter 6 in your books, page 78 and 79. Everybody should know that every investment you have has a pro and a con. Okay, it has a risk and a reward. And stocks, look, you can earn 30% like you did in 2019 perhaps, but you can also lose 30% in 30 days, which is what happened in March of 2020. Yes, the market's rebounded. Yes, the market's going to continue to go up and down the rest of your life, and that can really affect you depending on when that happens. So most of our clients in our retail practice do have stocks. It just depends on how much. That depends on their age and their risk tolerance, but most people do. As long as you can handle some of the ups and downs, then it would be smart to have some of your portfolio, perhaps a good chunk of your portfolio in stocks. Okay, and let's see here. some of the basics of stocks there. Mutual funds, basically tons of stock companies into one fund, so you have more diversification. I think most people kind of know how those work. And they're basically stocks, but in one fund. Tons, you could have hundreds of companies in one fund. They have more diversification there. We have bonds. All right, that was a long slide. Okay, CDs. Sometimes we call these certificates of depreciation because with where interest rates are today, I mean, you'd be lucky to get 1 to 1.5%. And if your CD is renewing, I know you cannot get 2% right now unless maybe you're in a 5-year CD. But I don't know that would be too smart right now either with how low interest rates are. So the good thing about bank cash is it's safe. The bad thing is there's no tax advantages, no compound interest, and rates are super low. So essentially on any money in the bank above and beyond emergency funds, you're really losing money because you're not keeping up with the 30-year inflation average of 2.5%. Rental properties are great. A lot of our clients have rental properties in their portfolio, creating great rental income. And I believe here we're just at the end of the presentation. Talked about annuities. Annuities certainly have their pros and cons. And our clients will have a mixture of all these different assets and investments in their plan. Stocks, bonds, annuities, cash, real estate, sometimes even a little gold. Not much Bitcoin though, not much Bitcoin. Okay, all right, and we're gonna go ahead and skip through that. Kind of talk about sequence risk. Average and actual returns are very different. We've run out of time here. Just one last page here. This would be on page 81 of the workbook. A couple of definitions here. Standard deviation, how far an investment deviates from the mean or average. Drawdown, that's when you are taking money out of an investment and the difference between the peak, the highs of the market, and the trough, the lows. That drawdown is the difference from peak to trough. So I do believe that this year there's potential for that drawdown to be as much as a 40% loss in the S&P. I hope I'm wrong. Perhaps it's 20, but that means we have the potential to lose at least another 10%. I believe it's going to be more. Okay, so we have pretty much completed the workshop and this textbook as quickly as I could have done it. The next part of the webinar and the class is the lab, the financial lab. And in this lab, you're going to take all of this information that you heard about today, all of this information in this textbook, and put it into your own financial lab, where we, in our retail practice, put that together for you personally, specific to your situation, whether it's a personalized tax mapping report, a Social Security action plan, a plan for RMDs, if you're interested in Roth conversions, if you're interested in how to survive this bear market, all kinds of different things. We put that together in the lab. It's free. And it's essentially, if you're working with another advisor firm, a second opinion on what they are doing for you. Complimentary, no obligations, and it's part of this class. So we'd like to offer that to you. At this time, we are finished, and I'm going to open it up to the digital chat. Inside the digital chat, if you have any questions, please put those questions in the digital chat. We have a couple of questions right now that I'm going to address. From one of our attendees, how can life insurance be used as an investment? So think about that again, like the difference between renting an apartment and owning a home. When you own a home, you have equity. You have equity inside that home. And so you're paying into a mortgage, you're building equity, it's growing with the value of the real estate market around you. In permanent life insurance, you're putting money into this policy, it's growing tax deferred, it's compounding, and typically the returns are around 5 or 6%. You're not lighting the world on fire, but all of the money is tax deferred and tax free in a permanent life insurance policy, which is fantastic. A lot of people use permanent life insurance as a Roth IRA alternative. And so that's just a quick answer as to how permanent life insurance, not be used as an investment. I would call it more of a supplemental savings tool that can complement your 401ks, your real estate, your stock market investments. Hopefully that answer helps. I have another question here. Congress has gone after the FERS special retirement supplement. Do you think that it will continue to be a target? Would they grandfather existing recipients? If so, or would it go away for existing recipients if they are successful in their attack upon this promised benefit? So that's a great question. And I would like to think that benefits would be grandfathered in to the person who asked that question. Oftentimes I get the question about Roth IRAs, and will Roth IRAs exist in the future? And will they go unchanged? They could go change, they could make changes to the Roth IRA, but typically what happens when any changes are made to the tax code, to retirement accounts, to pensions, especially with the federal government, those are typically grandfathered in. So that's what I would expect to have happen. Hopefully that answers that question. I have another question here. I retired from the Postal Service under CSRS after 38 years. I was also eligible for Social Security, but I had a windfall reduction. My wife just turned 62, and if we turn on her Social Security, she'll get $700 a month. If we wait until her full retirement age, she'll get $977. If I were to pass before I do, would I step up to her half? If she were to pass before I do, would I step up to her half? Secondly, does she have to turn it on at 62 when I did? Well, that is a pretty loaded question there and a lot of moving parts. What I can tell you, just for sake of time, is that we can take to the person who asked that question about Social Security and CSRS pension, we can take your specific birth dates, put them into our Social Security action planning software, and give you a very specific answer. We'd be happy to do that at no charge to you as part of the lab session. So we'd love to give you that information. I have another question here about long-term care insurance. Since you don't recommend getting long-term care insurance, what is a better approach? Okay, I didn't really get to address that in too much detail. What is a better approach? Well, a couple approaches. Number one, life insurance with long-term care benefits added to it. Annuities can have long-term care benefits added to them. And third would be self-insuring. So a lot of our clients have done a good enough job of saving for their retirement where, they've got $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, and they can set aside 100 grand, 200 grand, 300 grand, and just say, hey, that money is solely for a future potential long-term care event. And so if you have enough money saved for your retirement, which a lot of people do, you can certainly self-insure without buying any kind of insurance, without buying an annuity with long-term care, life insurance with long-term care. So hopefully that helps address that question. Better alternatives, life insurance with long-term care, annuities with long-term care, or self-insuring. Again, using your own money set aside. Going through other questions here. Let's see here. These are great questions. Is the spousal benefit available now? Well, the spousal benefit has always been available. So if you're already receiving Social Security benefits and you're married and you filed at the same age, then you're entitled to, the smaller benefit is entitled to be at least 50% of the larger benefit. Or if you didn't file at the same age, let me give you another example. And let's say the husband filed at 70 and the wife filed at 62. Well, if the wife's benefit is less than half of the husband's benefit at 62, then she is entitled to a spousal benefit to equal 50% of the husband's benefit at 62. But if the husband files at 70 and the wife files at 62, the wife is not eligible for half of the husband's benefit at 70. That's not how it works. Hopefully that answers that question. From another webinar attendee, is there value in indexed universal life and later taking money out as a tax-free loan in retirement? Absolutely, I would say yes. I do it for myself and for my wife, and many of our clients do that if you have enough time to fund the account properly. So typically I would say yes to that question. Again, the question was, is there value in index universal life, in funding an index universal life contract and later taking money out free of tax through loans and retirement? I would say 100% if you have enough time to fund the account and if the account is funded properly, which typically takes at least 5 years. The longer you have to fund it, if you have at least 5 years or more, then I would say yes. It could definitely be something we can look at together. Those are fantastic questions. Hopefully those answers help you a little bit. And if you have any more questions, please drop them in the digital chat. And then of course, we can answer any more questions in a personalized lab session with you, a financial lab, which is the second part of this course. Let me make sure I'm not forgetting anything. There should be a link right now in the digital chat room to our calendar. So if you want to schedule that complimentary financial lab session, which is basically a second opinion on your whole retirement plan and all the information we talked about today on today's webinar, put into a plan for you, into a lab, then we should have a link to our calendar in the digital chat. Click on the calendar and you can schedule your appointment right now. Any other questions, go ahead and type them into the chat. We have team members standing by. Again, if you did not receive a workbook, a physical workbook, we will mail those to you, but we need your addresses, okay? Some of them, for some of you, you've already received the textbook and we've already sent those to you. Some of you, you haven't received the textbook. That's because we didn't have your address and didn't have enough time to get it to you. We'd gladly like to mail you that textbook so you have it in hand. In addition, there's a survey which should come to you as soon as this webinar is ended. Please complete the survey. Let us know how we did. In the survey, that will also ask you if you want to set up an appointment, if you don't want to set up an appointment through the financial lab, etc. Let's see here. I have one more question and we'll finish with this from the same person who asked the prior question about the life insurance. In the case of indexed universal life, is that better than an IU? I'm not sure what that is, if that person means an indexed annuity or maybe they're asking, is that better than an indexed annuity? That's a good question. There's a big difference. Okay, yes, that is what the question is. The last question, in the case of the indexed universal life, account, is that better to set that up than setting up an indexed annuity? Well, they're really set up from two different buckets of monies. An indexed annuity, or most annuities, are funded by money that's already been saved, by a pot of money in a TSP, in a 401k, in an IRA, in a brokerage account, in cash in the bank. And you're taking that amount that you have saved, you want to do something different with it. And those are typically what fund annuities for the most part. In indexed universal life, if you're using that as a supplemental retirement and savings account, that's typically funded in installments every month, every year for 5 years, typically at the least, maybe 7, maybe 10. And I would say if you have at least 5 years to fund that type of an account, it can be a great complement to everything else that you've built for your retirement. We're going to go ahead and end the webinar. I hope this webinar was extremely helpful for you. And going back to that story that I told at the beginning, the great Blondin that came over from England, crossed Niagara Falls many times, I'd really encourage you to jump into the wheelbarrow with us, put all this information into action, take advantage of the financial lab, because that's when we can really help you to cross over Niagara Falls successfully into retirement, and more than likely help you to maximize, leverage, improve on the great job you've already done for your retirement. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.